Hello everybody and welcome to something very different for this channel. It is a quad bike, or a four-wheeler as you may call it. This is a Yamaha Moto 4 YFM 350 ER from 1995. It features a 20 horsepower single-cylinder petrol oil-cooled engine. Just behind that cover there is the oil filter, and then it goes off to the radiator at the front. As it has been sat for so long in a damp barn, it has built up quite a lot of surface corrosion. And there are plenty of parts that need to be repaired. So it certainly is far from fully working. I have no idea if the engine runs. This was sold to me in an untested condition. The main reason for this is because it looks like it's been vandalised while sat in the barn for a while. Somebody has come along and cut all of the wires. They haven't actually touched the ignition though. It does not have a clock which records the overall miles. It's just one which is for servicing. So that has been reset to 0. This is the choke just here. Then we have the dashboard lights, neutral, oil temperature, and this one should say reverse. As for the throttle, that does not work at all. Somebody's been in here and dismantled it. There's no spring. The hand grips are very worn. The brake does nothing at all, most likely because the brake cables have been cut or have snapped. And on this side we should have the little module to start and stop the quad bike. This is the fuel tank obviously. It is fairly clean and dry in there. I'll have to show you that later. Put a light in, so that's promising. But yeah, it's far from running at the moment. At the back we have the tow ball, the differential and the drive axle. It is a two-wheel drive. Up there we have the battery, which is likely flat after sitting for so long. And just behind the tail light we do have a storage compartment, which has nothing in it except for a sheared bolt. Yeah, here is the module that allows you to start and stop the quad bike, and also switch on the lights. That one starts, start and stop position, lights just there, and cut wires. But it's not like somebody's trying to hotwire these, it's just a clean cut. Here is the directional range selector. So we've first of all got reverse, then we've got forward low and forward high, and that does function. That actually shifts really well. If I can get this running, then I will be putting quite a lot of money into it, and I'll probably get a lot of parts powder coated, because as you can see it is quite rusty. And if fully working, it would be a nice machine. As for the wheels, there are a couple of punches, but they're not too bad. The tread is a bit worn. There's not too much perishing. The rear wheels are very chunky. Again, a bit of welding is going to be required here. But first, you've just got to make sure the engine and the drive work. But it is a really nice looking machine, and I like the colour too. It's got the two headlights at the front, which will look really good in the dark. So the next thing is to get this into the workshop. Now, I don't know yet if I actually want to wash this machine. Let's just take the seat off to reveal what it looks like under here. Okay, pretty dirty. So, see, I don't like to cover these machines in water too much, just because you can get the water in areas where you shouldn't get the water, in the electrics or in the air intake. But really, yeah, I think working on that's going to be a bit unpleasant, and it's probably had loads of mice in it. I've decided I'm not going to pressure wash it. I am just going to clean it with a hose pipe and a scrubbing brush to prevent water from getting into areas where it shouldn't be. It's cleaned up quite well, but now I need to get these 4 bolts removed for the air filter, and they are pretty corroded. I'm going to use this special socket which removes rounded off bolt heads, sometimes called a twist socket. And this is the smallest that I have available, so let's see if it works. That has got it. So now I can just assist this removal process. Okay, that is not actually removing it. It is just spinning, unfortunately. But once I do gain access into this air filter box, we'll be able to see exactly how dirty the intake is. If it's really clean, then that's going to be promising, but any old fuel which has been left in the carburetor might be a problem. I did also check the oil, and it is much deeper than it should be, and it smells of petrol, so there might have been fuel overflowing through the carburetor into the engine, which is a bit of a problem. Well, that's all but one removed, and there's a very strong smell of mouse all of a sudden. I think I can see a nest, but I don't think it's occupied. Now, I fully expected this machine to need some fairly serious servicing, so I'm going to remove the rear panel and the rear rack so that I can remove the entire airbox, because obviously I can't get the lid off, and by doing this I can take the whole airbox out and then I'll have better access to the bolt which is stuck. As I can see a mouse nest inside the airbox, I fully expect the carburetor to be bad. I expected it to be bad anyway, just because of it being in a damp shed, so I'll most likely be removing the front rack and front panel as well. So there is the airbox. I've managed to get it out. I've also had it in the press. I've basically had it upside down, and I've had a punch on the press, putting pressure on the back side of the bolt, whilst I've tried to undo it from this side, and it still won't move. It just flexes the plastic. So I think the only thing I can really do is cut the head off, then try and extract it afterwards. At least I'll be able to get the lid off. The only concern is cutting it with a grinder will heat up the plastic, so I'm going to have to cool it with water. I should now be able to get inside. I'm also putting my respirator on because this looks revolting. Yeah, I think the rodent that was living in here is long gone. Yeah, I think you get the idea of that. Disgusting. And after a quick clean, that is looking much better and smells a lot better as well. It's one of those smells that just gets stuck in your nose. Highly unpleasant. As for the stuck bolt, it's not actually screwed into the plastic. There is a metal insert in there, like a riv nut. So, well, I could maybe try and extract it, possibly. But failing that, I could just keep it in there as like a locator bolt for when putting the lid on, because the other three do seem to seal it fairly sufficiently. All goes together nicely. So I need to get a new air filter for it. But now let's have a look at the quad bike itself. This has opened up really good access to various different components. We've got the rectifier here, which was actually really caked full of mud. So I've cleaned it out a bit, but it does need further cleaning. We've got the electrics here, we've got the battery down there. Obviously the airbox went in here, and that's where we have the air intake to the carburetor. Luckily, it looks clean past the air filter. The pipe on the right is intake into the box, and you can see it's actually full of dirt that the mouse has brought in, so that's going to need to be cleaned. But the pipe on the left is past the airbox, past the filter, and into the carburetor. And that looks quite clean, a bit of dust, but really nothing too serious. One thing I have noticed though is the exhaust, or the muffler, is extremely rotten, very rusty. So if it does work, if the engine works and the gearbox works, then this really should be replaced, because it actually has holes in it in various places. So instead of removing the entire carburetor at this stage, I'm just going to remove the drain screw, and really it should be clean. If it's rusty or covered in like a gummy residue, then that's a bit concerning. This is the bowl for the carburetor. Okay, let's have a look at this. Yeah, quite rusty, and I can see some of that horrible gummy residue. I'll put that back in. I think I'm going to focus on getting the electrics working, because then I can actually see if the engine turns over. And if it turns over and then fires on carb spray, I can then rebuild or replace this carburetor. That's given me really good access to the electrics. I can now change all of the wires which have been cut. Also, it does reveal some fairly rusty components. As you can see, the shock absorber is looking very rusty. But the whole point of this first video is just to see if I can get it running. So what I'm going to do now is get those electrical components changed, and then I'm going to check the oil, and we can then hopefully see if the engine turns over. So first of all, we have the main cluster, which has been cut through. You can see all of them. They've just been cut through really clean. There's no other funny business going on there. No one's tried to join them together or whatever. So that can just be changed. It's all very dirty in here. So I have just bought a new aftermarket handlebar control box for the headlights, engine start, engine stop, all that sort of stuff. So that should just plug in nicely, just here. There we go. And we do have another wire which runs further down, which has also been cut. So that is obviously the main one. This is for the ignition switch, so that will be plugged in again in just a second. And these two, just here, are for the accessory, which goes on top of the rack if you wanted an accessory. And then finally, there should be another one. Yep, they are for the headlights. It needed some work. So, oh, and of course the horn, which is just sitting down there, looking very crusty and rotten. It might work. I don't know. The terminals are so stuck that they won't even come off. It'll probably just shatter the entire thing. It feels very weak. But anyway, the horn is the least of my worries. This one here is for the ignition barrel. And at the very back of the machine we have the old battery. Let's just check the voltage. 0.12. So basically 0.1 of a volt. I was fairly confident that battery would be no good, so I have bought a new one. This is a Powerline Bike 12 volt, 14 amp hour, 150 amps. So that should be a pretty good replacement for this. If I do get this running, I'm going to be giving it a really good clean anyway. But let's just give that a quick sweep out. Just use a couple of these reusable cable ties joined together. First of all, I'm going to check the engine oil, and then we'll have a look inside the cylinder with the inspection camera. Let's see if we have any oil in here. We do. It's showing over, and it does smell very strongly of petrol, so the carburetor might have been overflowing fuel into the cylinder, and that's made it into the sump. It doesn't say if you screw it in or not, so I'll do two tests here. I'll have to check the book. So screwing it in comes to here, maximum is just here, so that is overfilled if that was the case, and just dipping it in. Yep, it's still over, so it has too much oil, most likely because it's been thinned out with petrol. Yep, that does smell very, very strong. So that will have to be drained if I can get it running. It does also have an oil filter, which will be changed if it runs. Let's now have a look inside the cylinder. It will also be interesting to have a look at the spark plug. Okay, not looking terrible. It just looks like it's got carbon on it, but I can't see any kind of unusual fouling. Okay, let's have a look inside there. In we go through the spark plug hole, and that must be the piston directly in front of us, which doesn't look terrible. There is some carbon buildup, but that is totally normal. If I just change to the 90 degrees camera, we should be able to see a valve somewhere. Let's have a look. See if we can see anything. There we go, there's a valve. It's a bit rusty. I think that is just carbon buildup on there as well. So there's nothing in here which is alarming on first inspection. Well, that's all of the electrics connected. Let's see if we have any signs of life. If I just switch on the ignition, we do have a light. The neutral light has come on. Oil temperature light shouldn't come on, I don't think yet. And this is the reverse one. that might come on if I put it in reverse. But I think we'll go to the next step. We'll try and see if it turns over. Of course, if it does work, it should work quite effectively as there is no spark plug, so there's no compression. Here we go. I will go around the other side and I'll try that again. I couldn't have been stood in a worse place. Back on again. Well, the good news is it does turn over. There is a lot of dust or aluminium oxide coming from somewhere. I don't think it's too much of a concern at this stage though. I'll turn it over a bit more. I'm going to spray some lubricating oil into the cylinder. It's looking better. Right, what I've done is I have put the spark plug back in. I'm going to take it outside. I'm going to spray some carb spray into the carburetor and just see if it fires. I'm not worried about the engine oil level at this stage. It will just be interesting to see if this has the potential to run. Clearly the engine will fire on carburetor cleaner, but I want to get this horrible carburetor removed and out of the way because it is just full of aluminium oxide and rust. The last thing I want to be doing is sucking a load of rubbish into the engine, so the sooner it's out of the way, the better. It really doesn't look good, my hopes are not high for it. Let's just get it removed and we'll have a quick inspection. Well, I was expecting it to be bad, but honestly I was not expecting it to be quite like this. The cables have actually rotted away, that's why they're no longer connected. And we haven't even seen inside the bowl yet. I've just made a few cuts because they're all rounded off, but I should hopefully be able to remove these screws relatively easily. When the screw that holds the bowl on looks like that, you can really expect the worst. This is going to look so bad in here. That one's sheared. It doesn't matter, this carburetor is almost certainly a write-off. Okay, are we going to be in for a surprise? If we are in for a surprise, then it means that it's really clean in here because I'm fully expecting this to be absolutely abysmal. Ah yes, very nice. Absolutely full of aluminium oxide. Amazingly, the float actually moves. That is surprising. Wow. I have already checked to see if you can buy a new OEM carburetor for this, and you can't. The price was set at £750 and it says no longer available. So even if it had been in stock, I wouldn't have been buying it at that price. That is just absurd. But you can buy aftermarket ones for just £55. So I've already ordered one because I was fully expecting to replace this one. I have cleaned up carburetors in worse condition than this before and still got the engines to run perfectly. But to be honest, at £55, what is the point? We might as well just put a new one on and just have a nice reliable carburetor. So that would be the main jet, which of course can be cleaned. Actually, it doesn't look too bad looking further up there. Oh wow. It's like going to the beach. Yeah, there's lots of corrosion, lots of rust in there. Things that you don't see initially. And we mustn't forget this total disaster just here. That is completely locked up and is flaking rust everywhere. That is just awful. So no, I'm not going to go any further with this carburetor, which I was fully expecting. Let's just get it replaced with an aftermarket one, and well, the engine looks like it's going to run, so maybe after that I can fix the throttle and then maybe the engine is going to run fine. That was incredibly fast. I just put this order in on Amazon US and it came from America to the UK in about 4 days. So I've just picked up this Niche Industries carburetor assembly and it looks to be exactly the same. It's got the same part, well, it's got several part numbers actually, but the one which I need is listed. The only thing which I can see which is slightly different is it's got this manual choke, which can probably be removed and I can probably fit the other one, so we'll have to look into that in a minute or two. But yeah, it's very, very similar. Well, it's actually almost identical. The only difference is, of course, it's not totally seized. So yeah, I think I'm just going to go straight ahead and fit that. It did also come with a filter and obviously the cover which goes onto here. That is off at the moment because you do need access into there to fit the cable. But yeah, this is all looking very promising. Well, that is the carburetor fitted, just temporarily. It will likely be removed again. Obviously I haven't put the plate on because we still need to put all the cables on. This is just a test, and I've cleaned the fuel tank and I've put some fresh fuel in there. The tank actually was very clean on the inside, so that was nice and easy to do. I've put some fresh fuel into the tank and I think we're now ready to see if the engine will run properly off the carburetor. Will the carburetor be able to run the engine correctly? I'm going to get it pushed outside and we'll see. And there we have it. It does run and it drives, which is just astonishing. So this is all looking really promising. Obviously there are still quite a lot of concerning things, like the extensive rust which it's got throughout the frame and the shock absorbers and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's obviously going to need a lot more work in other areas as well. But this is a start. This is a good start. In the next episode, what I'll do is I'll get all of the cables sorted out. I have actually managed to source the replacement lens that goes into here, which says reverse, so I can get that fitted at some point in the future. The other thing which I really need to do is get the oil drained and replaced. There is a filter behind this cover, like I said, and that goes all the way to the front to the oil radiator. And that was warming up ever so slightly. Obviously, it didn't really get that hot, this engine, because it wasn't really doing anything. But it's a good sign that the oil is actually pumping around the system and is, you know, circulating as it should be. I've now loosely put the body panels back on, and I've also refitted the handlebars. You can see that I've also fixed the throttle. This obviously will have to be disassembled again if it all gets powder coated, but it should now be in a state where it is drivable. And of course it does not have brakes, so I will have to be extremely careful. And there we have it. It does run and drive, and it's actually really nice to drive. Of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is still so much more work to do, but it is still a really good sign of things to come, because clearly it runs, it drives, and it does not have any major mechanical issues from what I can see at this stage. So please do stay tuned. I will be working on this again in the next episode. It is very rare for me to work in episodes. Usually I just put one video on where the project is started and finished in the same video, but this is a much longer term project and it is just not something I want to rush into. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, see you again soon.